close that out. One more variable out of the equation here. Okay, cool. All right. And we are live. You're live. We're live on the Heroic Nation podcast / live training in the Heroic Industries School Group. And before I get into it, I just want to say that this is going to be another one of the greatest, probably the greatest podcasts ever recorded. I know I say that every time, and most of the time I am wrong, but this time I'm not. So just rest assured, this will be the greatest podcast of all time. Talk to Mike the Cop. Mike, formerly the Cop. No, he's known as Mike the Cop on Instagram and all social media handles. And he had no idea. He had no idea that he probably still doesn't know that he was on the greatest podcast to ever be recorded. And he's been on a lot of podcasts, and he had no idea. So, like, Mike, if you listen to this, like, hey, just know, like, you were just on the greatest podcast. Congratulations. But it was a really good conversation. It was fun talking about, like cop stuff, non-cop stuff, stuff that cops need to know and understand. And we don't. Like we don't know how to transition out of being a cop. We don't know how to develop certain phases of different parts of us and our personalities and our lives to be more well-rounded, to adjust things financially in order to get out of a uniform and hopefully do some different things. So that's very critical skill, something that we discussed probably should be taught in the academy. And it isn't, okay? Is not. But it should be. So that's something we discussed at length, as well as, a multitude of other things, which if you listen, you get kind of philosophical with a lot of things and bounce around a decent amount. So good conversation. It was fun. Glad to have him on. Like he's a pretty big dude in the social media space. So it was really cool to get some of his time, and I'm very grateful for that, honestly. So, yeah, and it was a great show, probably the greatest. So there we go. All right, other stuff going on that's worth discussing before we get started is the fight with social media is a little bit of an uproar if you're in the jiu-jitsu community. The Gracies have developed a system to end all systems, apparently. The safe wrap system. So the safe wrap system is twisting arm control. It is a gift wrap based on the gift wrap series in jiu-jitsu, and yeah, that's what it is. Okay, so they have retitled a jiu-jitsu move or series and called it the safe wrap system, and are promoting and pitching this to law enforcement agencies and selling it as the system that will be the safest and will eliminate needs for striking and use of force and punching people. And the marketing is very, very, probably very emotionally reactive for the public, for politicians looking to not deal with this, not deal with police having to fight people. And then for, police maybe themselves. Here's my issues with it. All right. My issues are not the tactics. The gift wrap series is a great series. Twisting arm control is fantastic, especially for cops. It is very effective. It is one of the most effective things that I've used, right? And if you don't know what that is, just YouTube gift wrap series jiu-jitsu or BJJ, and you're going to come up with a whole multitude of things. Maybe even the safe wrap system, maybe not. So that's not my issue. My issue is not the tactic. Like, the tactic should be taught. The tactic should be known. It is a very, very good control place to hang out, to do stuff. It's not a final cuffing position. That's for damn sure. You can't cuff people with their arms crossed in front of their face. You have to get them behind their backs. So you're still going to have to transition into from point A to point B. Really, this is not even point A. It's like, how did you even get there to begin with? Because perps don't just lay down on their side and give you their hand to put across their face. Like nobody does that. Even like elementary school kids that fight, like if that even still happens, they don't like they don't put their hands in front of their face and let you just like rip their hand across their neck, and like this like little twisted pretzel move. Um, so how did you get there? Like that's a whole conversation by itself because like if somebody is intent on not getting arrested to the point where you have to use this move, then you're going to have to put them in a place to be able to use that, and that typically comes with some striking. That typically comes with like a trip or a throw or a strike or something to that effect. That's very violent. And the move itself is also violent. Like you can't pull somebody's arm across their face and make it a safe position for them. Like so, moving into my issues with it, it's the marketing, right? It is the marketing, not the tactic. The tactic is good, right? But the marketing, like just the name itself, the safe wrap system, like you are in a fight, okay, a fight, like, and especially a fight in a street wearing tactical gear and weapons. This is not a safe place. Okay. This is not a safe place. I think we could all agree that this is not safe. And to pitch something as safe is pure bullshit. Like you can't pitch that as safe. You are doing something that is unsafe, right? Doing jujitsu in a gym is kind of unsafe, but there are all sorts of measures in place, mats, uniforms, gis, like that kind of stuff. People that are not on drugs for the most part, maybe some weed, but people that are not there with ill intent for the most part, other than maybe a psychopath every now and again that wants to go and just smash people. But even that is confined by terms of a sport. Confined by terms of a sport. Yes, I said that twice. All right. You can't you can't take that and put it on the street and call it safe because it's safe even in the UFC, right? Even in the UFC where there are weight classes and rules and you can't break people's fingers, you can't gouge eyes, you can't even knee a downed opponent. Okay, those are rules. Those rules do not exist in an alley. Like they don't. So like, you know, in that alley with said person on meth who does not want to go to jail because he knows he's got a warrant that's going to put him away for 6 months or more, let's say. All right. Even something like that, right? There aren't any rules. And and as much as we try to put rules on these and rule sets, like that dude doesn't have any rules. He has zero rules whatsoever. And you want to put this safe wrap system in effect and tell everyone that it's safe and that it's like the solution to all use of force complaints and use of force injuries, and you don't have to beat up like the perpetrators who are really victims. Like they're playing into this whole notion of nonviolent police work, and that's such a lie. It is such a lie because the moves themselves, the jujitsu itself is it's a violent sport. Wrestling is a violent sport. Football is a violent sport. Hockey is a violent sport. It's using force, producing force against your opponent in a violent fashion, right? And to say otherwise is a lie. And this is what we talked about with, what I talked about with Aaron Genetti a few weeks ago is like the language of violence. And it's like you can't take that out of it. And if you try to take it out of it, you're sanitizing something that can't be sanitized. You cannot sanitize a fight with a meth head in an alley, right? At 2 o'clock in the morning when he's all hopped up on a bunch of meth and he's been on a bender and he just beat his wife or girlfriend into a coma. Like these things happen all the time. And if you want to try to sanitize that, like go to hell. Like go to hell, because that's mitigating what we go through as cops and what actually occurs in that alley. Like you want to sanitize that? Like get out of here. That's what's got people pissed off about this. Like you are trying to sanitize everything and it can't be. Like what we need people to understand exactly the dirtiness and the nastiness and the bullshit that we go through. Like that would be helpful. Not coming up with a modified gift wrap twisted arm control and calling it a safe wrap that you can then sell to politicians and agencies. on our backs, on the backs of the work that we do. That's what's got people pissed off. That's what's got me upset about this is your marketing. You guys are full of shit. Stop lying with your marketing. And really, the tactics are fine. Nobody's going to be upset about the tactics. I haven't heard one person say that twisting arm control is a bad thing. That's not it. It's the way you're selling it. You're riding our backs. Like, stop sanitizing it and stop putting it out like, oh, if you punch someone in the face, like you're wrong. Strikes to the face, palm heels to the face, to the jaw, to the nose, like to the brachial plexus origin. Like all these things are appropriate actions. Elbows to the clavicle, elbows to the face, believe it or not. Those things are valid techniques. And to try to pitch something like you can do this without hitting someone is insane. Knee strikes. Knee strikes are very effective and they are 100% okay to use. And to say otherwise is ridiculous. Now, the use of them and how you use them, like that always has to be looked at. That's the same for the safe wrap system. If you use that inappropriately, you'll be wrong. Okay. Like it just is like, like as much as there's no rules in a street fight, like we have professional standards that we have to go by based on your agency, Supreme Court case law, Granby Connor, Tennessee versus Garner, like all these uses of force things that govern the overarching structure of what's acceptable for policing, right? Those things are in place. But like the bad guy, the perpetrators, they don't have rules. They don't have to adhere to any of those. That's not even in the consideration of resisting law enforcement. Like you're breaking the rules, like that's not a thing. Okay. We have professional standards that we need to maintain to make sure constitutionality is in place. But once things exceed a certain point, and this is a greater conversation of use of force and like life and death, right? Like lethal force, like the constitutionality of lethal force. Once things exceed our ability to stop them in a less lethal fashion, then lethal force will be applied. And that's going to be different for every officer based on training, based on size, based on ability, based on age. Like my 25-year-old self is not as skilled, but it was stronger and faster in a lot of ways. Right? My 42-year-old self is not the same guy. Okay, so that there's a difference. There's a different way that I'm going to apply things now than I did then. Some are better, some are worse. It just is what it is. So the burden of my ability to escalate and de-escalate is based on a lot of those factors, right? If I get injured during the fight, if I break a leg during a fight, if I smash my head and I feel like I'm going unconscious during a fight, like all of those things need to go into consideration with use of force when it exceeds my ability to handle things other than lethally. So again, the notion of the marketing is just total nonsense. It's total nonsense. They're just playing politics. They're playing politics to try to get big contracts, right? They want to be the only game in town for law enforcement, which from a business standpoint, I kind of understand. But the way they're going about it is it's portraying things the way it's not to a group of people that are already like wanting to see it that way, and it's not true, or the public who doesn't know any different, and then they see the Gracies with these commercials on social media, and and it's like, oh yeah, that seems way more reasonable. All you have to do is twist their arm in front of their face, and then you never have to throw a punch again. Oh, why are these cops continuing to throw punches? Oh, because they don't understand violence, because they're normal people, right? Normal people don't understand this, and that's kind of okay, and it's kind of accepted, like, or acceptable, is that a normal person kind of shouldn't understand like what a street fight in an alley at 2 o'clock in the morning with a meth head feels like. Like, it's like, why should they? How should they? Like, it's probably not good for them. It would probably destroy their worldview. Again, talked with Janetti about that. Like it would shatter their worldview and they wouldn't be able to handle it. Okay. And this goes into like you can talk about terror management and like different psychological theories about trauma and stuff like that. But like a normal person and like a reasonable person would not understand it, does not understand it, shouldn't understand it. A reasonable officer is a different burden. And that's why the reasonable officer standard is used in Supreme Court case law, because a normal person would never understand what we do. And it shouldn't be like assumed that they would. So like that's part of the reason that dash cams are great and body cams are great, but at the same time they are not, because they're exposing the normies, right? The normal people of society, the average person to things that are the reasonable person to things that are unreasonable in their world. Okay. And then to pitch a system that then supports that worldview when it's not, that's not it. That's not true. It needs to be pitched inside a reasonable officer standard, not to a reasonable person. So they're pitching it to the public, they're pitching it to politicians, they're pitching it to admin. They are not pitching it to street cops. That's the marketing. That is what they're doing. Right. And if you look at the price point with it, the price point with this stuff, as far as I know, and probably should have checked the safe wrap cost of the training, but I know the GST program is expensive. And unless you get your agency to sponsor you, you probably aren't going to afford it. So there's that to look at too. But a price is an interesting thing. We'll talk about that in a second, right? But that is the marketing aspect of this that has got most cops that are annoyed by this or offended by this or like irritated, or mad or whatever emotion you want to plug in there. Like that's why. This is why. Like it's not the tactics, right? It's all the other stuff that goes behind the scenes, and I think hopefully people listen to this and really like it resonates with cops that hear this, especially cops that do jujitsu. I've seen black belts that I really respect online are irritated about this. Right, part of it is too the fact that they tried to or are going to or whatever patent pending on this thing. Like they just took a jujitsu move and put a patent on it or tried to or are trying to. It's like, okay, so what, like nobody can use this anymore except the Gracies. And if you do, you got to pay them $20 or something before you can use their gift wrap series. Like, is that what we're doing? That's absurd. But what is that actually doing? Like, why did they do that? Like, it seems stupid, but the only reason you would do that from a business standpoint is to patent and trademark your system so that if anybody else does a system that has this move in it, regardless of what it's called, they're gonna litigate them into extinction, so that they will literally be the only game in town. And that's not going to be good either, right? That'll just water down your training if it's just a massive, just like it just won't be good, because it'll turn into just departmental mandated crap, which we all know isn't effective. Okay. So we all know that. Like if the government's making you do it, is probably not quality. Okay. So if you get linked into that, like they'll make a shit ton of money, but their quality will just tank. It'll tank. Okay. This is just how like public versus private goes. Okay. If you want something high quality, like it's not going to be from the government, like it's not going to be. Okay. So that's why they're doing it. That's why this patent is pending on this, is so that if you use that move and God forbid you were actually say safe rap, like and they found out, they're going to litigate you right out of existence. Same thing CrossFit did. Same thing CrossFit did. If you do functional fitness, if we do a workout of power cleans and pull-ups and put a clock on it and call it a name that is synonymous with CrossFit, or is if we do 21 15 9 thrusters and pull-ups and we call it Fran and we're not paying the $3,000 a year for the affiliate fee, then you are breaking the rules and we're going to litigate the crap out of you until you can't exist anymore. Okay. They'll bring out the big sticks on that, big lawyers. So to an extent, like as a business owner, like I kind of understand it, but at the same time, like you're just trying to be the only game in town. Okay. So if you do own a jujitsu gym, you train cops, you have your own protocols of combatives, defensive tactics, whatever you call it. Just make sure that you don't use their terms. Never use their terms. Never even say their terms in your courses, and then you'll be fine. Like you can still use it. Like nobody can patent a jujitsu move. Like I can't just patent a double leg and call it the Anthony takedown, and then all of a sudden, like you have to pay me 17 cents every time you say double leg. That's not a thing. That can't happen. Um, so you just can't use the terms. They're trademarking the terms, not the actual move. That's what they're doing. Again, the only reason to do that is to crush your competitors and to be able to litigate them out of existence. So that's another thing that's annoying to people. And it just is like it's pretty arrogant. It really is. Yeah. So cost. Let's go back to that. All right. I mentioned earlier that like who they're promoting it to, you can tell. Like typically, like the GST program is expensive enough. I can't remember what the cost is. It's several $1,000s. And unless you're an incompetent cop and you get caught on body camera sucking at fighting, then they'll comp you in. Like, does anyone know these officers? I'll give them a free GST, blah, blah, blah. So, like, all you have to do to get a free GST is to suck on camera. Like, okay. Like, yeah, that's, I understand. But at the same time, it's like, well, what about the dudes that are actually good and would like to go to this training? Right. What about that? Like, hey, why don't you take some guys that like had great fights and like employed a gift wrap series on camera and like, hey, this guy did really good. Let's scholarship him into a program. Don't see that very often. Kind of annoying. Um, anyway, the it's just expensive enough where I was like, I ain't paying for that, right? It doesn't have enough value to me to pay that out of my own pocket, right? I'm not going to do it. Now, who gets to go? Like department instructors, academy staff, upper level officers or command, stuff like that, right? Those are the guys that get to go typically, right? Um, and it's usually the select few. It's usually the same ones that go to all the stuff, right? They get to go to this, okay? But it's because the department is paying for it. They're footing the dime. So that's who they want. Is they want the departments because the departments have the money. Like road cops don't have the money. They want to be able to provide a product that's just expensive enough where it's like, oh, we want the government to get it because the government's got deep pockets, right? So this is kind of their mindset with it. And to an extent, I understand that uh, because it's got to have value. It's got to have value. So this is kind of a double-edged sword here because, like, if the government's paying for it and I go for free, like, because my department's paying for it, how much value does that have to me? Nothing. I didn't pay for it. Okay, so maybe there's a sense of like duty and honor that my agency paid me to do this, and I should probably do a good job and bring it back so I can disseminate the information. But it also doesn't have any real value. So like I don't have any skin in the game other than a weekend of training, right? That's it. So like 50-50, whether I'm really into it. If I'm really into it, then it'll have value and I'll bring it back and I'll do it. But if I'm like, yeah, kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, or I just wanted to go for the weekend, or my buddy was going, so I conned my department to send me to like that's not gonna they're not gonna learn anything, right? They're not gonna learn jack. Um, because like when you want change, like you have to want the change bad enough to have an investment, okay? And that's also with you know with with guys I talk to with my program, right? My program, like one-on-one, isn't free. I don't think that it's like pricing cops out because I think the price point is valid, right? And I've done a lot of market research on that to verify that. But what I run into is, oh, well, I'm level 10 committed, right, to changing and to getting in shape and to losing weight and to becoming like the peak performance athlete that cops need to be, right? but and here's all the reasons why. Like I'm really scared I'm gonna like get hurt in a fight and not be able to like continue to work, or God forbid, like I did get into a fight and it didn't go well. Right. I talked to a lot of guys where that's the clincher. Where like I got into a foot chase and it didn't go well. And I got through it, but it could have gone bad. And this one didn't, but it could have. And it's very evident, after thinking about it, you're like, holy shit, like that could have gotten ugly. And it didn't, but I got to change some stuff. And I'm level 10 committed to changing until all of a sudden you're like, not for that price point. I'm level 0 committed to changing. So it's like, well, what is your value? What's your monetary value that you do have in committing to your change? Because there has to be some type of skin in the game. There has to be some type of investment. And if you look at what you're already spending your money on, like that is what you're investing as important. That's it. Okay. So like if you are sitting in and this is not judgment on this. I'm not saying this is good or bad. Like this just is what it is. If you're sitting in a big ass house and paying, like three, four, $5,000 a month for that house, and then you have $1,000 a month car payment on a brand new truck, and you have like all these toys and a boat and like that kind of stuff, then you are investing in entertainment. You're investing in entertainment. If you are taking vacations, this is the way I used to be, right? Is vacations. I would invest in vacations to like Orlando and go take the kids to Disney and stuff like that. Like I was investing in entertainment. Okay. And that's not good or bad. It could be great or it could be negative. It just depends on where you really want to invest in you and in your future and in your family and like that kind of stuff. It's investments in the future. So like, are you willing to invest some of what you're already doing for entertainment and toys and vacations and food and like junk food, not like quality food, like we need to eat, but like how much of that are you willing to like move and shift in order to invest in you as a human being? Okay. And as an officer, as a firefighter, as like having the capacity to do things effectively and efficiently, to sustain a longer career, to extend your ability to work longer in order to support your family potentially, to like building a robust aerobic system that you can survive into retirement, like building skill sets when you're new so that you can have a better understanding of how to maintain strength, durability, and like mental and physical health throughout this grind of a profession. Like, are you willing to invest in those things? Well, yes, but only $200. Okay, well, is it how much of an investment is that? For some people, it might be like, yeah, dude, that's all I got. Okay, badass, get after it. But for some people, it's like, oh, that's all I got. And it's like, okay, is it? Is it? Right? It might not be. So, I'm not saying that money always has to be or is the only way to commit to things, but it usually is a pretty good indicator of where you're spending your energy and where you're sending your focus and where you're sending like what you are labeling as important is typically that. Like just follow the money. If you just follow the money, that'll tell you where your investments are. And yeah, I mean, if you want something different, like you just have to change the investment. And that's it, that's it. Sometimes it hurts, but hey, like changing hurts. Like changing hurts. It's not like change is not a comfortable thing. It's painful. You know what I mean? Like that's why as you watch your kids grow up, you think back like, man, I remember when I was like 10, 11, 12, 13, and like, man, my knees hurt all the time, my elbows hurt all the time, and it's like stretching and growing and becoming this like, this new thing, right? Um, and it's the same. Like things cause pain when they're changing. And the pain, like you pick your pain, right? You choose it. Like the pain of staying the same versus the pain of going through the process of transition and transformation. Like that you pick. And that's what's cool about it is like you do get to pick. Okay. You literally choose one path or the other. And and this is cool too. Like, you know, part of the hero's journey. Like I really, it's kind of going off some rails here, but the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's life's work, his concept of the omni myth, right, is really, I think, a critical thing to kind of understand. And that's part of the reason that I chose Heroic Industries, Heroic Nation. Like the hero's path and the hero's journey is really important. And part of that is that when you are presented with the opportunity for adventure and change and going away from where you're at currently, like you deny it. You deny the call to adventure. And that's part of it. That's part of it. And if we look back at all the like big adventures that you had in your life and you start like piecing it together and you're like, oh yeah, I did say no to that a couple of times. I did say no to that once, or I didn't jump on that right away. That was the denial of the call to adventure. Okay, that's what it was. And if you look at any story told throughout history, like Star Wars is the ultimate kind of like example of the hero's journey in like modern fiction. Like you see, where did Luke not? And I'm not talking about like the newer Star Wars or the prequels. Like I'm talking about episodes 3, 4, and I'm sorry, 4, 5, and 6. I almost messed that up. So like those ones right in the middle, the good ones. When you look at Luke and the way that he was called to step away from Tatooine and to go into this big adventure and to fight Darth Vader and go through all the journey and the process that he did in order to become and transition and transform into a Jedi Knight and then like save the universe from the evil empire, right? He denied that call. He denied it. He didn't want to go do it at first. Okay. So that's something that's like, well, think about that. Like, did you just say this is too expensive because you're denying the call to becoming the hero and having the adventure that you need to? So stop denying it because it's gonna keep knocking until you say yes. It'll keep knocking. It'll keep knocking. And sometimes you deny it a bunch before you're like, shit, like this thing won't go away. I gotta go with it. I gotta go with it. And it's painful for me sometimes. I have conversations with dudes when it's like, dude, we have literally had this talk 5 times. Like, how many times do we have to have this conversation before you accept the call to action? You accept the way to step into the new transformative process that you're saying no to. And it sucks though, because like to transform you have to leave behind certain aspects. And I just talked to a buddy today about this, where it's like, I didn't want things to change. I liked things the way they were. I liked them that way. Well, tough shit. Situations change, times change, people change. Like things break, things need to be built, new things are built around old things, and then and it's just it's life. It's life, man. And you have to be open to see that. And when you can be open to see that, like you don't see the negatives, you actually see the doors opening in front of you. Like as one door shuts, like you just have to be aware and have to be present enough and forward thinking and forward focused enough where you can see the doors opening in front of you. And that's how you navigate transitions. It's how you navigate transitions into new jobs, into positions, out of positions, like and that provides continued sense of purpose in the sense of this greater hero's journey. All right, that got a that got a little bit more intense than I wanted to, but I think it's all good information. Okay, so yeah, I'd love to hear some feedback on um, on what you guys think about any of that, right? From the Gracie stuff to the marketing to the hero's journey to investing in yourself and where you're spending your time and money, right? Yeah, so hit me with it. All right. Also, like, enjoy this episode. Let me know what you think about the conversation with Mike. And yeah, that's all I got. All right, dudes and chicks, because that's all there is. All right. Later. Awesome, man. Well, dude, thanks for just randomly jumping on with some random dude on the internet. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah, man. I'm here for
uh,
it.
well, I always talk to people, and that like I've done this on and off for like I don't know, since I had my gym. Um, Probably like 3 4 years of like randomly doing podcasts, and then like it's hard. I mean, you know how it is, like it's a grind to do these things, so then give up. But in the process of doing that, like I've gotten access to some really cool people, and
Hmm.
I got guys at work, they're like, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't know, I just shove my way into these circles like online and hope for the best. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you
Yeah,
know
man. It's like people are a lot more accessible than people think that they are. It's just gotta ask. Yeah.
yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, basically I was just, curious as to like, some stuff about your background. I'd love to talk about like your social media and why you did it.
Yeah.
And then kind of get into like what you're doing now. Cause I think it, like I sent you in that message, I think it really relates to like transitional points in life. And like there's some really cool stuff that you can like dig into what you're doing now and how you kind of got there.
Cool.
So yeah, man, fill me in on like kind of your background. I know you worked in Detroit, and like how kind of like where'd you grow up? Are you from Michigan? How'd you end up in Detroit? Like, a little bit of history on your police work side.
Yeah, yeah. So just for the listener, like I definitely live in Metro Detroit and worked in Metro Detroit, but not for the city. So just in case no one thinks I've got like stolen Detroit valor or something like that. I worked in some like bordering areas, so like in that area, but not for the city. Especially when I went into policing, they didn't pay. I mean, I still got paid crap, but they were even worse. So, um, but yeah. Anyway, I moved to Michigan when I was 5, so I was like came around the country. My parents were from here, and when I was super young, they moved us back. So I've been in the area since then.
Okay. Did when when you were going like moving around stuff like play sports, like stuff like that, like any background with that?
Yeah, I mean, I did it. I did, I suppose all the normal kid stuff, little league, soccer, all that stuff. I don't think flag football leagues existed when I was a kid. I have no recollection of anyone doing that, but yeah, I did all those things. Did karate, whatever, like all the I guess normal kid stuff growing up. High school sports, I did wrestling 1 year, and that was it for high school sports.
Okay. And then did you stay, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but you stay in the area for like college, going to military, anything like that?
Yeah, I went to college here in Detroit, University of Detroit.
Oh, UD. That's where my mom went.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I was there from 93 to 97.
Oh, cool. And then did you like major in criminal justice, or how'd you end up from there into police work?
No, I started out as pre-med and then like realized I was way too stupid, way too stupid for that. About like after my first semester. It could have been alcohol consumption and late nights, or it could have been stupidity. The world will never know, but I was like, yeah, this is not happening. So I tried to figure out, well, what am I gonna do? And I'm like, I like arguing, I like reading, so it became philosophy was my major for my
Cool.
BA.
Oh, sweet. So how'd you wind up from there into going to police work? Is it just that there's not too many like philosophy jobs on the market?
Yeah.
Go figure.
Actually, it was in college. Like I have family that was in public safety even when I was like really young. Like my dad was a dispatcher for Champaign-Urbana Fire Department, and like so I've had some type of connection or affinity to public safety since forever. And I actually met a couple of cops on campus, and it I don't know, the job like intrigued me. It wasn't my path at the time, but that's when really I was like, man, this seems like it'd be a really cool job. And then I got a job in security at, if you're from the Midwest, you'll know the chain Meyer. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I
So I'm up in for the fourth, I'm at my parents' house. That's why I got the blurred background so you don't see all like the old like
yeah.
picture stuff on the background or on the wall. But I just told my sister I go because there's a Meijer like half a mile down the road because there's
Yeah.
Meijer on every corner. And I was like, I'm gonna track how much you're spending this week at Meijer, and I guarantee it's like $2,000.
Yeah, I used to catch shoplifters at Meyer, and then every time we caught them and turned them over to the police, I was getting to know the local cops. And Um, then one of my guys that I worked with all the time, he went to the police academy and went into law enforcement, and that happened like four times with like different people that I worked with. They all made the jump from there into law enforcement, and that again still stuck with me. It just I got married really young, started having kids very young, and I was more focused on survival than preference of careers. And so yeah, again, it always stuck with me. Then my brother actually, same thing. He started out in that loss prevention, but then he did like went into like make more money like grocery management and stuff like that. But then he went to the Detroit Police Academy and got hired in Detroit. And I watched his career and I was like, man, yeah, I could really do this. And then finally, the economy took a dump, and I had a window washing business that I was running, and lost a lot of clients. And I was like, man, I need a change. And that's when I decided to make the jump into law enforcement. And that was like 2008 when the decision was made, 2009 when I got actually like took the tests and started going.
Oh, okay. So how old were you when you did that?
Like 33.
Oh, so you were a little bit older for your class then, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't the oldest. And I definitely, as I worked at the academy later on part time, like I saw lots of mid, late 40s, even into the 50s coming through the academy. I was like, wow. But yeah,
50s, man. That's not even it's not even allowed in Indiana. They don't at like
really?
30, yeah, 36 is a cutoff because you can't get into the pension after that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so you were 33 when you got into that. So that was you said that was '09. So
Yeah.
how long did you work in law enforcement then?
Uh, well, I got out in 2020, so 11 years. I stopped full time in the summer of 2017, and then I kept my cert and stayed working like a weekend warrior, um, part time, because I still kind of enjoyed it. But I knew at that point that I needed to be moving on to something that could make me more money and give me a better future. So
So at what point did you get into like social media? Because that, I mean, like you built, yeah, have built, like, and continue to build like a pretty huge brand. You know, like
yeah,
Mike the Cop stuff, like is everywhere.
yeah. It was the whole point of doing anything on social media was to draw attention to an organization that I was a part of starting, with another lady. Her name's Tristy, and we started this thing, humanizing the badge. We kind of merged. She was doing some blogging and work online. I had started a blog called Cop Life way back in the day, just to start sharing experiences and whatever. And so, yeah, I was doing that. We crossed paths. We started doing this thing called humanizing the badge. And we were like a year in and trying to just think, how can we draw more attention to this cause? It really wasn't like a major business or anything. It was just, we were thinking if we can generate revenue, we can help cop families. What can we donate? I mean, it's still to this day part of a nonprofit. It's not like a big windfall, big windfall of cash. And at the time, I was watching. My kids were showing me this guy, Officer Daniels, on Vine, and so I was like, "Well, he seems to be getting a lot of views. I could try to make some videos, and then maybe that would like draw more attention to the page, or the group or whatever." And it worked. So then I just didn't stop.
So how did you transition into like just doing it non for profit? And then I mean, is it something that you like clearly you'd be able to, but I don't know if you're doing it like as now currently like as a revenue stream. Have you been
Hmm.
able to build that like monetarily? Has that ever been a goal?
Yes and no. So like early on, it actually became problematic because the videos were doing really well and there was a lot of attention to the videos, but I didn't like that actually because it was starting to be like I felt like my presence on the page, and it wasn't just me. There was Tristy, there was another guy named Steven. We had a bunch of people contributing to the page and to the effort, and it wasn't just me, you know. So like I was like I was feeling uncomfortable with this page called Humanizing the Badge being like mostly my videos. And I was just like, it just doesn't feel right. I don't like this. That's when like in 2016, I actually just made a separate page and said like I'll just keep this stuff separate and then I'll kind of like champion the cause. Like I'll point people back to that, but let's keep the main thing on humanizing the badge. I don't want this to be my thing. I want it to be, a collective effort. And so but yeah, I mean as far as monetization goes, this was really early on in like most of the Facebook days. The monetization, like there was no such thing as ad revenue, like maybe on YouTube or something, but that took a while to grow. Um, and so there was some monetization on YouTube, and then I think Facebook released monetization. I want to say like 2018 for Facebook, and I was banned within 2 weeks from it. I spent, fortunately, I had other admins on my page, so I could post to my page, but it wasn't like I was logged into other people's Facebooks. I spent almost 20 months banned off of Facebook and
Why
Instagram.
did they ban you? What'd you get banned for? Do you know?
Conservative content and positions, basically, like I post a meme or post a video, and it would just get demonetized and then removed from Facebook, blocked for just over and over and over again. So monetization wise, no, this never really been a thing. And then they turned it back on for me. I want to say it was like 2020, the early 2020. They turned it all of a sudden, like my page was monetized again, and it lasted about 6 weeks. And then in 2021, I posted a meme on January 6th, and then I spent the next 30 days completely banned from Instagram and Facebook. I was banned from Meta for 30 days. And then since then, uh, my personal page gets more interaction than my 1.1 million page Facebook, like easily. I'm completely shut down on Facebook and Instagram. Like in the last 30 days, I reached 1.8 million accounts and I lost every month since January 6th. I've lost minus 0.01% of my followers. So it's like there's an automatic setting to just keep removing people from me. So I just fight the good fight, I guess. All that to say, yes, I was able to turn digital to analog things. And so how I did that was more through affiliate marketing and products, that kind of a thing. Not really like ad revenue, but um, whether it was a t-shirt or challenge coins or something, like that. And I just was learning the skills of marketing and business in that sense. And that's when in 2017, I left the full-time policing. It was kind of risk-free because I was going to make more money and I could take a year leave of absence from my department and come back if I needed to. I would lose seniority, but I wouldn't lose my position. Like I would come back at the same pay, all that stuff. Like I would just, if anybody passed me in seniority, then I was giving that up. But so it was really relatively risk free. And that was to work with a company that was doing like screen printing and sublimation and product manufacturing. And I was helping social media content creators, create merch stores and things like that. That's what I did right when I left. That really wasn't super. I wasn't jazzed about that, and it was in that time that I kind of stumbled into the real estate thing and kind of found my real path out.
Did you get any shit from like your department or like coworkers, stuff like that when you were doing this social media, or was everybody pretty supportive?
I think, I mean, I'm sure there's always some people talking behind your back, but I mean, as far as the overall thing, it was like super supportive. Um, I had been doing blog writing and nonprofit work and stuff like that for almost 2 years before Mike the Cop was ever a thing.
Mhm.
So they like by the time that I came to say like, hey, can I post these videos? Like, make what's our social media policy? Make sure I could do that stuff. Um, they just gave me a lot of rope because they already knew. I think that they knew I wasn't doing this just to like, I don't know, get clicks or just get attention. I had a purpose for it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that helped. If I had just like randomly started doing it, I don't know that it would have been as received, but they had already seen me doing things that no one else in the world was seeing, right? Like it wasn't to the public eye. It was just like what I was doing um in the profession before that. So I think like
Yeah.
they were super supportive.
Okay, cool. So something like you talk about humanizing the badge, and I think that's like a term. Well, like, what's your take on what that means? Because I think over the last since 2020 for sure, like I think that's one of those hijacked terms where
It
it's
is.
like so many of these and it's like the cops you see on some of the meme pages that get like reposted. It's those semi troll accounts.
Yeah.
But they do point out some cops that are I my opinion, like just being idiots,
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
clearly violating their social media policies and then just under the guise of humanizing the badge. And it's like, so what
Mhm.
is what does that actually mean?
Well, I don't know what it means anymore. Yeah, because I see that hashtag on, a lot of TikTok cops kind of like pages and I'm just like, what are we doing? What has this become? And um for me, I can tell you like I articulated it for myself. Like I'm like I asked myself, okay, what am I actually doing? Like what is the point of what I'm going to be doing on social media? And for me, it was to encourage cops and to educate non-cops in entertaining ways. Like that's what I was trying to do. Um and at the time kind of like I was watching like Michael Brown situation unfold. That's what really got me to be more like I don't want to use the term activist because I don't think that that's necessarily like an accurate term in this, but like I wanted I wanted to give more voice about the reality of law enforcement that the media was either straight up lying about or skewing, right? And so I wanted to say like, hey, listen, like there are real people on the other side of this that you're destroying, right? That's where the whole idea of humanizing the badge came from. Like, listen, this is not just like some faceless force, that is occupying America. These are people, right? And I really wanted to educate people on that and show like we're just normal people. And so I wanted two things to be true at once. I wanted cops to be able to see my content and to relate to it, like, and to be encouraged. I wanted them to like be able to blow off steam and laugh at something and get it. And I also wanted non-cops, I wanted it to be relatable to them too, when they could think like, oh, well, that's actually funny, or that helps me shift my perspective a little bit. Like I didn't think about it that way. And then just stand up for, you know, things that are true about law enforcement. So what it's become today, I don't know. It's because people can, I'm sure I'm very confident I have my critics, but um, I didn't. I certainly didn't do it for humanizing the badge. Doesn't mean trying to get likes and link clicks and whatever else. It it has to have a purpose behind it, and that was mine. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's become something different. It's almost like, and granted, like on the state of social media, everything becomes super polarizing. But it's again like it's a hijacked term. But the way that you're using it and the way that you're really like talking about it is like, I kind of look at it from a standpoint of like we have as cops, we have a history of being so silent and stoic and like don't say anything, don't talk about anything, don't talk to the public about like things behind the veil. And it's like
Hmm.
that's not really what we need to do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like we need to show people some of it, like the appropriate stuff. And then what you're talking about is actually just like building relationships, which is almost the entirety of our profession in general,
Yeah.
and I think, everybody kind of forgets about that. So,
Yeah.
humanizing the badge, I wouldn't say like that's not like a term I would use anymore if I was just starting or something, but I
I
would
don't
say
use it.
just right, just humanizing
Yeah.
people in general. Like
Yeah.
we're all just people in this little drama that's unfolding. And in many ways, like we're just kind of like actors in this, and we're not in charge of like major stuff, but everybody wants to attack us. It's like, dude, we're the bottom rung of this thing. Like what do you really think this is going to accomplish by like
Right.
attacking us at a local level? Like there's all sorts of other things at play.
Hmm.
And it's like, what are you doing, man? I live down the street from you. Like, why are you throwing bottles of piss at me? Like, that's
Right.
not effective or anything. So, yeah, I think that's really important, and I think that we do a poor job still of like, hey, we just need to have discussions with people, but we also need people to listen, and that's kind of hard to do. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head, like doing it comedically, because like
Yeah.
at least that'll keep people's attention because people don't want to learn things, like God forbid.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so like with real estate. So how did you make the transition into that? And like give me the details on that because I looked at it's a 10-7 project, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So I looked at that a little bit, but like I'm still pretty ignorant. So so fill me in.
Yeah, I had a friend, Chris Fisher, and he had actually been a part of humanizing the badge, and we hit it off. And as we got to know each other, he was making a transition from Alabama, where he was a cop, to Arizona. He was going to do a lateral transfer. He was marrying his wife, and he was making a big cross country move. And then in the last 2 weeks of his employment in Alabama, he got in a fight with a suspect, tore a bunch of tendons in his gun hand, and so he had to have surgery. And basically, the PD in Arizona was like, "Well, thanks, but no thanks. Try again next year." Like,
Yeah.
so he found himself in a strange place. And as he would tell it, he only had his wife and five of her family members in his phone. Those are the only people he knew in Arizona. And he found himself unemployed and like, well, crap, what do I do now? And ultimately, that led him to get his real estate license and start down that path. And he was finding some good success. And he kept telling me, I mean, this goes back to like 2015. He go like, you gotta get your real estate license, gotta get your real estate license. And I'm like, I'm not a salesy douchebag, not gonna happen. Like good for you, but it ain't me. And so finally I relented and said I was traveling a lot at the time. Like in that 2017, 2018, I was traveling a lot. And so I said, all right, every time I'm on a plane, I'll do a little bit of the course, and I'll when I get in my license, I'll let you know. So I finally did, and then it was exactly what I thought it was. It was horrible. I went to some local brokerage, and I was like, "This is super stupid. These guys wear shirts I don't wear. They want cars I don't want." I'm like, "This is like everybody's like, you got to call your leads back," and I was just like, "Yeah, again, this is stupid."
Like
Um,
Happy Gilmore. You're just in the wrong in the right. Like if I wore pants like that, I'd kick my own ass.
exactly how I felt. And so he's like, "No, man, you're doing it wrong. You just, and it's hard to kind of teach that stuff from a distance, especially when you're not experienced teaching people in that." So long story short is I hung my license. I basically quit. I was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing this." And then not randomly, but like somebody reached out, a cop that had moved here a few years back, and him and his fiance, they're like, "Will you help us sell her place and buy our new place?" I'm like, "Sure, let's meet." And I was like, I decided like I was just gonna give him the full me, right? So I showed up in shorts and a t-shirt and the shower slides that I wear around everywhere, put my feet up on the desk, and I was like, I will negotiate the hell out of this for you, but you got to be okay with me being me. They're like, sold, fine. And and so when I did that, I was like, okay, now this is fun, right? Like getting to go do this and solve problems and negotiate and help people while being myself, like hell yeah. Like I'm all in on that. And I got paid. Like I like this, you know. So I really discovered in that transaction that cops are perfect. They're absolutely perfect for real estate if it's done right, because all the skills that they learn translate so well into this space. Really any service based business. I don't care if it's lawn care or whatever. It doesn't really matter. If it's a service based business, cops could move from any PD in any town USA and go right into it and do well if they can just shift their brain a little bit. So yeah, that's where it kind of started, and then it just never stopped. I just like rolled one thing into the next and kind of like figured out, me and Chris together, we had gotten like some coaching, and we really started to piece together what was working for us. Why was this working? Why wasn't this working? And we pieced together a whole, I guess, system, as it were, that we have like a process for how we can take a brand new person, especially from like the public safety background, and help them succeed, because we kind of carved a path for that. And so yeah, in 2020, we launched that 10-7 project to say like, hey, let's help other people do this. Um, and that's what we've been doing for 4 years, and still grinding, gonna keep grinding. So
Have you seen like an influx of like major numbers since 2020? It's like honestly, yeah, like, I mean, you were a cop for long enough. Like you see different tipping points. You talked about like Ferguson, and that was one, and then like 2020 was a huge shift
yeah.
with so many things, like even down to the type of recruits that we're getting. And it was
Yep.
like not to get too political or conspiracy theory esque, but like like even our department where we had riots with several thousand people and like some serious violence. And I'm looking at these rioters, and I'm like, these are not physically tough people. They're counting on losing this fight physically.
Mhm.
And then that, like, I was like, oh, after about 2 days of it, I'm like, oh, they're just baiting us into a fight. They're instigating a fight so that then they can point fingers and say, look, you are what we said you were. And then I was like, well, how are they going to win this? Like, how is this a win for this side or this ideology? And it was like, oh, this is a war of attrition. They just want to make us the bad guy that nobody ever wants to be us anymore and
Mhm.
create this power vacuum, right? So
Mhm.
that's like the whole point of this kind of like ideology and process. So like what I've seen is like, all right, like when you and I, because I got on in '07, we're going through hiring processes. I don't know how it was over in the in that
Slim
side of,
pickings.
well, in '07 for down where I was in Indiana, it was like, dude, there's like 30 spots, and we got several thousand people applying.
Hmm.
So it was pretty competitive to get on. I had to go through
Yeah.
several hiring processes to get hired as a police officer. And that was
Yeah.
still close enough to 9/11 where I think people still wanted it. And now it's swung the other way where it's like, dude, we're barely filling spots. So it's like
Yeah.
they created this war of attrition. And like I have to imagine that doing something like this, you would have seen a lot of people or a decent amount just like, I'm out, like what else can I do? Is that what you've seen? Or
Yeah. When we first came up with the idea, we had no, honestly, dude, we were, I mean, listen, I told you I'm a stupid like I realize many times that I get myself into things that I am too dumb to complete. Uh and this was no different. I'm very much a ready, fire, aim sort of a approach to some of this stuff. But
yeah.
um when we came up with this idea, we truly had no vehicle. We had no systems. Like we didn't have a way to actually deliver coaching to people effectively. We didn't have much of a solution to this at all. We just wanted to help. And so we're like, hmm. So we put the word out there, and this post went sort of like semi-viral or whatever. And we had like several thousand people reach out. This would have been like the fall of 2020. And to this day we regret that, because like there's no, we just never, we didn't follow up with almost any of them. We thought, oh, we're gonna get like 6 or 8 people to be
Right.
like,
A
yeah, I want to
handful.
talk to me
Yeah.
about real estate, and we're like, whoa, what do we even do with this? It was impossible. Now our systems are much more refined, and we could handle that today. Like that wouldn't be a big deal. But yeah, for example, just in June alone, I think we added about 260 people that registered on that project site into our launch group where they can kind of get information and just so everybody knows, like we have nothing, I have nothing to sell you. Like this, we don't sell anything. We don't sell real estate courses. We don't sell anything to you. So, um, so I think there's because cops are skeptical as all get out, of course. And but yeah, now we have systems in place, and we have about 230, 240 cops in the project now, with another 210 or so in real estate school actively right now. And that just keeps growing week over week.
That's awesome. Um, so one thing I've kind of like noticed with you is based on like your background, you have points where it's like, a lot of people get stuck at, right? Pivot points. Okay. So like your window washing business needing like before you were a cop, even it's like,
Yeah.
all right, so like this isn't working. How can I pivot and make my life work? And the same thing with going through a social media, like how can you make this work when it's a transitional period. And then especially with this is huge for like, all right, I found something else to do. Now, how do I pivot and make this happen? Now, how are you able to do that? Because I see a lot of us, especially in this job, it becomes such a rigid mindset of like, this is who I am, this is how I do things. I can't have a side hustle. This is not the type of person I am. Like, and it to me, it's all like, dude, you're lying to yourself. But how
Mhm.
are you able to kind of like keep that open mind and really see like the frame of, hey, where one door shuts, there's like six more open. You just got to keep your head up. How are you able to do that?
Yeah, I think for at least for me, one thing that I attribute that to is the fact that I did go into policing later in life, right? Like later compared to a lot of cops, right? 33.
Yeah.
So dude, I already had 4 kids. I had jobs. Like I had bought in, like I was probably on my second or third home, at that point. Like I, it, I had already been living life, so I had owned businesses. Uh, and so to me, it was like, I don't know, it wasn't the be all and end all. I loved being a cop. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And there's a lot of great things that carry with me to this day, and uh, good friendships and experiences. And I mean, that can't be taken away. So, but when I was able to see something outside of policing because I had already lived 14 years, 15 years of my adult life without it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
Yeah.
I didn't
That's
feel
that
like I needed it.
Yeah,
So
that's really interesting because it's like I look at just like outside looking in, I look at your social media, your YouTube stuff, Mike the Cop, and you would assume that it's like this is this dude's identity as being a cop, and it's really not. It's a part of your identity, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And that's really
yeah.
cool because I
I've
think
actually I've actually tried changing my username, but Meta will not allow it. So people kind of tease me. I made a video the other day about like, hey, reality check. Like, it's not healthy for this job to be your identity.
no.
And it was a buddy of mine actually that commented, like, says Mike the cop, like, and I'm like, yeah, touche, I get it, but I can't change. I've begged them. They will not let me change it, and I don't know why. So it's like, well, I'm stuck with it whether I want it or not. Like, because I was gonna be like Mike was a cop or something, or do something different, but they won't let me.
No, man, I like it. I like it. I like the dichotomy of this. I really do. And it's like, it's so critical that it's like, listen, this is a part of you. It is not all of you. And really, like you talk about transitional points and mindset, and that was huge for me in 2020. I was like, all this stuff about like, okay, what's going to happen with this profession, even down to like, medical stuff coming in from the coast, like what are they gonna make us do? And I was like, am I ready to give this up? Like, And then I had to go through a thought process where I'm like, no, this is only part of me. This is how I make money. This is not all of me. And I can take all these skills that I've developed, just like you said, cops are perfect for real estate, and I can do a million different things. So really,
Yeah.
it's like it's terrifying at first to think about it, with like your life without this job, because it is pretty stable for the most part, and it's fun, it's adventurous, like it gives you all those, dopamine hits and all that kind of stuff that we get addicted to. But at the same time, like on the outside looking in, there is a life beyond it. The world does continue to spin, and the
Yep.
fact that like you're really epitomizing that with this 10-7 project is really cool. Because like, one thing that I always tell, like, either clients that I'm working with from a fitness and nutrition standpoint, because that's what I focus on primarily, but also from a mental health side, like cops die on the average 5 years after retirement. That is a
Yep.
stat. It's
Yep.
been a stat for a long time, and nobody really talks about it, and it really pisses me off. And I think a lot of it is that there is no mission afterwards. And like you're just like, cool, you're done. See you later. Here's a watch or whatever. Like, bye. And then there's nothing to transition to. And you have to have transition, and you have to have a new purpose. And like, like you do that well in general, and the fact that you're trying to impart that on to cops, is awesome, and we need more of us to do that.
Yeah. I mean, for me at this point, I've been asking myself, what is it that I'm all about now? Right. If my content is not trying to educate non-cops and keep cops encouraged in entertaining ways, like with this, like, because everybody knows if they've paid attention to, like, I was basically doing sketch comedy, right? Like short pieces, like that's kind of like what I was known for. And there's certainly more to me than that. I don't want to lose sort of like that sarcastic, humorous edge. And so like I'll throw in I'll make a meme here and there or whatever. I don't really see myself doing sketch comedy as much in the uniform kind of a thing anymore. But I can apply that. But right now for me, it's all about helping cops build better futures beyond the badge, right? Because it's not a matter of this is one truth that I really want to drive home to people. It's not a matter of if your cop career is going to come to an end. It's just a matter of when, right? And are you going to make that transition on your terms or on someone else's? It could be a catastrophic injury. It could be getting laid off. That happened to me. Like you just get a notice one day in your mailbox, like, "Hey, thanks for being here, but you're not going to be next month." Like what's going to happen? You're going to retire, and a lot of people. I don't know how it is where you're at, but at least in Metro Detroit, it's not as common anymore because now people have to work 30, 35 years to get their full whatever. But 20 and out was super common. So we got a ton of people around here that they're 41 years old. They started when they
Yeah.
were 21, they're 41 and they're done. They have a pension and like, okay, now what? You're going to go get a security job? Or are you going to be a court officer? Come on, man. Stop it. Like do something with your life, like something different, you know, something that it does like create some interest or difference or change, man. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that this, when I FTO, right, I talk about this with rookies, and I'm like, listen, you need to understand, like, the same thing. Like, this job is not meant to be forever. And I mean, I really wish, because I think the ATF actually has like mandatory retirement at like whatever age. I think they're like, you're done, get out. And I would really like to see states start doing that for local law enforcement, like mandatory retirement age of something that's gonna allow you to have a life on the back end, because it's really not, to me, like, I love this job, and I'm gonna have a hard time with not having like the adventure of the day-to-day stuff that we do. That's gonna be my biggest issue. But having a mission and a focus and something on the back end of that will help to fill that hole,
Hmm.
because this is not something that I want to do into my 50s, like, at all. I
Yeah.
don't think that'll be good for me. And like, I tell these rookies, like, you got to learn how to take these skill sets and develop it in the private sector. And I really think that we should be teaching that in academy settings.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was a lot of good things communicated in the academy, but they didn't talk about after policing. You
Right.
know, like I
Yeah.
really didn't really prepare you for that at all. And I know of one of my former bosses that uh died in his sleep later in his career, and then another one left, one of my lieutenants, and he retired and then went to be a security guard somewhere. He died within, I think, 3 or 4 years of retirement. I've seen it like unfold before my eyes, watching that stat be real. I'm just like, dude, yeah, I don't want that to be me. Like, I want to be, that's, I'm all about my grandkids, man. Like, I want to have an impact. I will be on the jujitsu mats, and I will be slinging real estate or doing something business wise. Like, until it's over. There's no such thing as retirement for me. There's just, more adventure, more mission. But I think that's it. Someone's got to tap into that sense of purpose for sure.
Yeah, and really, I mean, you can break this down as deep, like, like philosophically as you want to, but like even like Viktor Frankl's, Man's Search for Meaning, like what
Yeah.
is well, meaning is giving life meaning. So
Hmm.
if you're always on a path to give it meaning, and honestly, I think that can change over time and probably will for all of us, but you have to be having those conversations with yourself, or you're not going to get there, and then all of a sudden you're
Hmm.
going to get stuck and depressed, and and then life's going to be done before you know it, you
Yep.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not just true of cops. Like I just had this conversation with a family member about this same exact thing. Like, dude, you have to continue to grow and build. And it's hard. It's hard to do. But having, people available, and that's where social media, I think, can be very helpful. It can be overwhelming, but it's like at least you have exposure to these different people.
Yeah, for sure.
When did you get into jujitsu? Was it on the job or was it after?
Uh, I think always on the job. I got exposed to it. Like, my first department did Krav Maga as their defensive tactic stuff. And so then I was just like going on my own too to classes, and I started to hate the classes because it was like soccer mom kickboxing. It wasn't really, I don't know. I was just like, what am I doing here? And then when we did our training at work, I'm like, why am I always like pushing someone's eyeballs in or ripping an Adam's apple out? Like, how often does that happen? Like, what's going what's going on here? Like, it was just a little bit I don't know, just never made much sense. And I had a great friend who was doing jujitsu at the time. He was like, no, you got to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I dabbled in a few classes and whatever. And then eventually I started really actually training in 2012 was really when, like, I had done a few classes before then, but like when I started like with any kind of regularity, it was 2012. Yeah.
Okay. Where are you at now with your practice?
I'm still on the mats as often as I can be. Schedule's been a little bit crazy. So I teach a class on Friday mornings for cops. Um, so yeah, I'm usually on the mat. Like, a bad week is one time, a great week is three or four. So I'm
Yeah.
like trying to be as much as I can still, and create some consistency. It's not always easy with work and everything, but yeah.
How do you navigate? I'm just curious because like you're a little bit older than me, and I know what I'm going through on the mats. Like I can't stand up with these, college like 20-year-old wrestlers because like I'm decent at
I'm a
protecting
guard
myself.
puller.
Right. Right. Oh, that's what I was going to ask. Like, how do you navigate your training to not just get abused by younger dudes? Like, I want to keep standing up, especially because I'm still working. Like, I think takedowns and starting from standing is
Yeah, for
critical for
sure.
law enforcement. But the
Yep.
volume of stand up that I can do, I was like drastically lowering every day.
Yeah. Yeah. You just learn to be less athletic, man. That's all I do. I roll like an 80-year-old right now at 48. So,
Longevity, that is the game.
yep, exactly.
Um,
I do a lot of anymore. Um, and I think this needs to be, like, this is a whole separate conversation about jujitsu, but um, I go with a plan. That's really what I do. I'm only working on one thing. Like, right now, I'm working on a very particular, like, I'm working on escapes from half guard and side control, and I'm working on a 2-on-1 guard on my offense. Like those are the two things that I'm really kind of deep diving on right now and trying to perfect. And so I don't do open. I'll do like maybe at an open mat one open like totally open roll. Otherwise, I'm just asking my partners like, hey, can I start on the bottom and we just work from there. And if I escape, then we reset, or if I escape, we switch positions or whatever. Like then I just work on really specific things, and that like drastically reduces some of the proclivities for injury or whatever else too. So
Yeah, it's just much more controlled, and you're actually working on new things. And that's what I found too. Like if I don't work positional stuff like that, like I end up just doing the same crap that I'm good at, and I never touch the stuff I suck at ever.
right, yeah,
With that said, kind of like directing that back into like a law enforcement discussion. Now, I'm sure the departments you worked on are the exact same as everywhere. Like the motivated cops are the ones that train. The
yep,
ones that need to train don't ever touch it. Now,
correct.
you being like really good with social media marketing, messaging, branding, how can we, either we as cops that are, trying to reach like fitness and nutrition and stuff like that's what I do. Like
Mm-hmm.
how can we reach the ones that need it the most, that are resistant to listening? Or how can departments get the ones that really need it into training? Because it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it says it's an interesting dilemma because like if from a social media perspective, everything starts with the ideal client in mind. What are their pain points or what are their desired outcomes, right? Pain or pleasure is the only two motivators for human beings. So you appeal to their pain points with the solution to those things, or you offer the opportunity for what they're pursuing, right? So like it's pretty straightforward. The problem is that those ideal clients don't really exist in policing because you can't make somebody want to be more proficient. Unfortunately, it takes them getting their ass kicked or a terrible situation. And even then, I've seen guys dig in and still think, well, that was just a fluke,
Yeah,
or it was because of XYZ. It's hard. I think it has to take place at an administrative level, which could be a little bit of attrition there. Like guys, the serious guys that take training like they ought to eventually will be the bosses, right? Like you hope, right? They take the place of current administration and can like that culture begins to change. But until it takes place at an administrative level to where it's required, um, I don't know that there is going to be much of a change because and there's really no excuse for it. There's no excuse that a department can't there's and there is nothing that will fire cops up more than to say that there's no excuse for you to be fat and incapable. Like that will make them so mad because they're fat and incapable.
right.
It's like it's just a fact. And it's you can't make them want it, but departments could make it happen. 1,000,000%. You could create an environment at a department where there were certain fitness standards that were minimum and tested regularly. There is no reason that I know because they used to call me in off the road for shooting qualifications.
Hmm.
Hey, car such and such, report to the range, right? You go in, you load your mags up with whatever they say. You run the course, you do it. It's 30 minutes. Okay, here's your, check your box. You did your qual, off you go. Why can't they call a car in and go, all right, we're going to do push-ups and sit-ups today. Like you got to do, 50 uninterrupted of both or so, whatever it is, like whatever standard you come up with. Why can't they do that? They 100% could, but they don't. So they could also do like, hey, we're going to come in and for 15 minutes, you don't have to like work up a huge sweat, but you could actually rep out some law enforcement appropriate takedowns and cuffing, right? You could rep that out for 15 minutes and go back to the road, right? Like they could do these things. Admin's just unwilling because for them, um, it's not a, here's a scary truth. It's not about the safety of officers in the community for them.
Yeah.
If they're not like I have said this to people in police administration, and I'll say, I mean, I have no problem taking heat for that. If you're a police, if you are have any influence for leadership at police department and you are not requiring athletic performance and or providing and requiring defensive tactics training that's effective, you are derelict. You are a danger to the profession and you are damaging it and you're putting lives at risk. And it's only a matter of time. Like it's only a matter of time till you lose your ass in a lawsuit or lose your job because you didn't take the time to do what you needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that we could unpack for hours, and I don't think either one of us want to do that right now. But but I think like briefly getting into it, a lot of the issue that I've seen is many states don't have a definition, a working definition of what fit for duty is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's hard to make a standard based on no definition.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. So you would need to do that like for the department that is you're discussing, and this is our standard, or you're going to go off the road and you won't be able to work part times like that, would hit people in their pocketbook and they would stay in shape based on that standard, right?
Yep.
Another issue is marketing. Like they need to be able to market to us, and they suck at it because like departments don't need to market. They're always going to exist. They can lose money every day for till eternity and they're still going to be there. But I mean, how stubborn we are as cops. It's like I need it to be my idea, so I have to figure out how to make it your idea in order to get your ass in here to train. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like otherwise, it's just not going to happen. That's just how we roll. That's what our like we're trained to be that. Like so, you have to communicate that accordingly. And like you said, the the if you're in leadership and you are not discussing this, and it's such low hanging fruit for everybody, like you are derelict to the profession for sure. And then the fact that so many people, mental health is a big buzzword now, and like
Yep.
resiliency, that kind of stuff. But if you're not addressing physical health first, that's the easiest pathway to mental health is physical health. And like you don't have to do anything other than like talk about people's sleep and hydration. Like that's like lowest hanging fruit for mental health, and it's like if everybody listens to Andrew Huberman now, right? So like his podcast is amazing and he talks about this every single time. The intersection of mental health, physical health, and performance is
Yeah.
huge. It's huge. So if you're not addressing at least some of these low hanging items, then you're not doing anything, and you really only care about the perception of doing these things, not actually doing them.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. There's no doubt we need to keep the pressure on for sure. and and hopefully see some changes.
Yeah. So, but the way to do that and see changes, I think, is doing it like you've done. I think you lay out a really good roadmap to a lot of these problems, and it's like we can't count on. I mean, we can bitch about departments all day, but like the bottom line is, it's a government agency and it's not designed for some of that. So how do we fix this? It's like, well, we as individuals have to fill in the holes. You know what I mean,
Yeah.
and count on each other. And
Yeah.
and that's where I think the stuff you're doing is awesome, like leaning into like your skill set and developing new pathways for cops for all of these things that we just kind of laid out quickly. But
Yeah.
like
That's been good.
that's important.
We I follow the effective fitness combatives curriculum and they're really contributing to changing the culture for sure. But yeah, individual guys have to, it's like, well, my department doesn't pay for it, or my department, like, well, whose responsibility is it then? What is that what your wife wants to hear when you get laid out on the street? Like, is that what your kids want to hear? Is that dad didn't want to train because the department wouldn't pay for it, and
Right.
so he's in the hospital now. Like, what do you like? How much are you taking active responsibility for yourself? It's it's like that. It is what it is, and most of these guys know going in that if they're going to get hired at department, they if they're halfway smart, they know, oh, they're not paying for my jujitsu classes. They're not paying for this. Like, well, either don't take the job there or decide to take that job with your own responsibility to say, I'm important enough and my family's important enough that I'll take care of it myself.
Yeah. Well, and then really I've been talking about this a lot too with people is like just that mindset of like it is my responsibility and I have the ability to do this and take action on this. And then that will keep the frame of like that internal locus of control, which is epically important for mental health, especially on the back end of like, like a big fight or some shit that happens or a shooting you get into. Like you've taken the personal control of your destiny more or less,
Mhm.
and then that helps to not only like build up before, during, and after a critical incident.
Yeah.
Like that's really really important, is to keep that as like, I'm in charge, I'm doing work, like this is me affecting, my will onto the world, not the opposite way around, not being a victim.
Yep.
So well, awesome, man. I don't have anything else. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we jumped off?
No, we could talk about that stuff all day long, but
Right. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you got a huge following, but and I don't know how many people, like the last guy I talked to, I was like, yeah, we might get 8 views on this. Like that'd be a good day. I'm still rebuilding this podcast. So but where can people find more about you, the 10-7 project, that kind of stuff?
yeah, I mean, as far as the 10-7 project goes, it's TEN, the spelled out the number 7, 107project.com. You can reach out if you got questions about it on Instagram. If you look up Mike the Cop on Instagram, I should be the first search. Uh, there's another guy that hates my guts that goes by Mike the Cop too. He's a retired NYPD guy. He hates me. He's out there.
Really?
So, yeah. uh, but so yeah, if you ask him about me, I mean, maybe he'll tell you what he thinks. I don't know. But yeah, you'll find me on Instagram is a great place to DM me. I'm most active there. My name's Mike Edwards. You can find me on Facebook too. I think my Facebook username is 107Mike. And so that's my personal page. You want to follow me there. I don't care. I'm pretty much an open book. I don't hide. So
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks a ton. I appreciate your time, and like anything you ever need, like hit me up if I can help at all. I'm honestly like a couple hours away from you, so
yeah, man. Likewise, just reach out, whatever. You got my number.
sweet. Well, thanks, man.
All right. See ya.